Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Wildfire Defense Forum and virtual tour. My name is Ben Stapleton. I'm the Executive Director here at the U.S. Green Building Council, Los Angeles. We're really honored to host many of our speakers today who spent much of their career helping to defend our communities here locally from fire and are looking for ways to continue to innovate and expand the work they're doing. And we're just honored to have them with us. I'm going to talk a little bit about our organization to kick things off while people log in, but also talk about why we're doing this work, why are we here today, and really dive into that a little bit. So just first of all, a little bit of background. So we're the U.S. Green Building Council Los Angeles. We're an independent nonprofit. We're affiliated with the Green Building Council that runs the LEED credential and certification that you may know of, but our mission is a bit different. We're really focused on leveraging the built environment to transform Southern California into a more sustainable region for all. And we can't do that without people. We are a membership-based organization. We cover LA County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County, Ventura County, and are expanding to Orange County this year. And we have a number of committees that are available for people to join if you're interested in getting involved or diving into an issue. Our hope is that we can provide a platform for you to make an impact in a positive way in your local community or on an issue that's important to you. And as always, our ask to folks is to really just be engaged in creating a more sustainable future, whether that's joining a committee, being a mentor, volunteer, learning, whatever it might be. We just want people to be engaged here locally if possible. To that end, we have some events coming up here over the next few months. We have this virtual tour today. Actually, next Wednesday, we're also having a deep dive on RELY as a framework for resilience and looking at how to reduce wildfire risk. We hope you can join us for that. We'll be putting some information here in the chat. Actually, if one of our team members can put the link to register for that in the chat, that would be great. In November, we're doing a sustainability tour of SoFi Stadium. I don't know if any of you have actually been to SoFi Stadium yet. I've been there once. It's pretty awesome. Really excited to do that from a sustainability perspective. Our Women in Green committee is having their decade-long celebration in November. We're going to be doing also some deep dives into zero waste. And then we have some other events here to sort of round out the year in December, most important of which will be our gala, which I'll talk about in a moment. Here's some information on the RELY event we're having next Wednesday. This is a free workshop to really look about how to use this tool to assess wildfire risk. We hope you can join us for this. This is a sort of a continued conversation on our topic today. All of our recorded content, including this event today, can be found on our talent portal on our website. We have a ton of recorded content over the last nearly 2 years now of a pandemic, and there's some great stuff there I hope you can check out. And on our page that's dedicated to wildfire defense, we actually have, I think we have 8 or 9 virtual tours now. And as always, if you appreciate our work, we're a small nonprofit team. If you feel motivated, please donate by texting GREEN to 707070. It means a lot to us, not only to get your support, but really helps enable us to do the work that we continue to do on a day-to-day basis. And along those lines, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our Green Gala coming up on December 8th. We'll be doing this in person at Union Station in downtown LA. This is the holiday party we've all been waiting for 2 years. So we're really excited to get our community together and celebrate. We have awards, both community awards and building awards. So really excited to having this event in person this year. And then I want to talk for just a quick moment on why we're gathering you here today. Our goal has really been to bring the green building community, the real estate community in general, really more into a partnership and conversation with the fire prevention community. We found that a lot of the best practices around reducing fire risk are just not culturally ingrained yet in the building community, whether that's architects, engineers, contractors, and our job currently right now is to really help ingrain sustainability as part of the culture of how we build, how we design. And we want to make, being aware of how to reduce fire risk, being fire wise, we want to make that part of that movement as we look to accelerate sustainability in our built environment. That needs to mean reducing our fire risk. And we really want to encourage the fire prevention community to leverage us, help us help you. There's almost 80 million square feet of LEED certified buildings here in the state of California, almost 30,000 certified LEED professionals. We continue to see growth across the industry. We can continue to see impact from sustainability in buildings. There's a variety of certifications, whether it's LEED or sites. The Envision certification around infrastructure has been gaining a lot of popularity. These all are avenues for you to use to really help grow fire prevention best practices here in our state. We want to help you do that. And we started doing this work in 2017 through 2019, naturally in helping folks rebuild post-Woolsey and Thomas fires in a more sustainable way. We ended up helping around 100 homeowners look at how to do that through one-on-one expert consultations and support. We've been doing tours in collaboration with the Theodore Payne Foundation, and that has led to us wanting to continue this work. Last year, we started doing some webinars and best practices. We also did some virtual tours of homes and gardens on how to reduce fire risk, and hosted seminars at our Municipal Green Building Conference and Expo, which is our largest event of the year. We typically get about 1,300 attendees at that event. And then earlier this year, sorry, my screen slowed down a little bit there. We hosted what we were calling a mini conference in June to really bring together the green building community and the fire prevention community. A number of those tours are available on our website now. That was a really great event for us to bring folks together. And again, we're just trying to create this cultural change. Part of that for us is we're working hard right now on trying to procure funding and resources to create a certification for contractors and landscapers around reducing fire risk on site. Our goal is to really enable the private sector through being able to market themselves as people who've been more educated around these issues to help reduce fire risk, just like we do now in sustainability. People get these certifications around being a green professional, and then they advertise that they have that certification because they're the best person for you to hire for the job, whether that's as a contractor or a landscaper. We want people taking that same approach to reducing fire risk. So that's the mission that we're on right now to help really get this education out to the market. And as part of that, we're really proud today to release a wildfire defense toolkit. We've got this information from a lot of our partners at CAL FIRE and FEMA and the National Fire Prevention Agency. There's a QR code here in the lower left-hand screen. You can actually scan that on your phone and go directly to our website to download the toolkit we've created. Really we're building on a lot of the great resources that are out there now, but we wanted to compile those, make them accessible for the building community. So we're really happy to release that today. And then a few things I'll leave you with before I turn things over to Dave at SCE is there's some great momentum right now in the green building world, whether that's momentum around materials and increased transparency on materials, things like EPDs that tell us what materials are made out of. These are things that the fire prevention community can take advantage of, really build upon these movements to improve the transparency and information about where we source our materials. The smart home movement continues to grow. The Internet of Things, whether that's indoor and outdoor air quality sensors to irrigation systems to fire suppression systems. This is a great trend in the building world that should help us reduce fire risk. Issues around energy, we're going to hear a little about planned shutoffs right now, but microgrids, increased use of solar, increased efficiency. These are all things that the fire prevention community can really lean into. And I think we've all experienced this over the last couple of years, but we're all a lot more aware of our environments than we were pre-COVID. And their ability to have an impact on us. So health is a major issue. That's not just air quality, but that's natural lighting. That's the types of materials we're using. Again, these are things that as we look to reduce our fire risk, we should also be looking to improve our occupant health in our buildings. So with that, we're about to dive into our event here today. You've definitely heard enough from me, although this isn't the last you'll probably see of me today, unfortunately. We're going to have some welcome remarks here from our partners at Southern California Edison. We're going to hear from folks at San Bernardino County Fire a little bit later today, the Wildwood Watchers Firewise Community. We're going to hear from our partners at FormLA on some California native landscaping. And then we're going to have an interview with a realtor, with Brenda Meyer from the Mountain Rim Fire Safe Council. But most importantly, we're going to have some informational breakouts at the end of the event today. You'll see the topics there. We're going to launch these breakouts later on after our main session, and you'll be able to go into a room and speak with some experts around these issues. If you have questions or if you just want to talk shop, it's a chance for you to connect with people on a little bit more one-to-one basis. We'll keep those open for about 10 minutes or so and then adjourn and keep the Zoom open for some networking if you want to talk to folks till probably about 6 p.m. or so. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dave at SCE. Dave, are you there?
I'm here, Ben. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you okay. Mm-hmm. Well, we could hear you okay.
Not hearing a response.
No, we can hear you. I think you're just a little bit lagged, but we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. So
I wish we were able to hear you, Dave. It's not coming through. I'm going to suggest maybe that we come back to you here in a little bit, and or you can maybe try turning off your video. But I'm going to suggest we come back to you here in a little bit. All right. Next up, we have our friends Adam Panos over at San Bernardino County Fire. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Ben. So as Ben mentioned, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Adam Panos. I'm a deputy fire marshal with the San Bernardino County Fire Department. I've been with the department about 15 years, been in prevention, fire prevention, that is, about 22 years. So, you know, a lot of people, and not really, I'm sure our audience here today, but a lot of people, you know, think of fire department as just the guys that ride in the big red trucks. There's actually a lot of support divisions and departments and personnel that go into, you know, protecting the public safety from fire. So that's kind of what I do. I'm in management, so I have a team of 46 people that do inspections. We do plan check. Some of those inspections include defensible space inspections. So we do all kinds of things, arson investigations. So, you know, it's a lot of fun for me. And so I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about, to educate everyone a little bit on structure, home hardening, and also to defensible space. It sounds like maybe our audience today might be familiar with the building code aspect of it a little bit, or at least know the concept of home hardening, but hopefully after this, you'll see it a little bit more from a fire department perspective and why it's so important. So first, what I'd like to do is ask Ben to just play a video, and it kind of introduces introduce you to our department and some of the things we do.
All right, here comes the video. Just bear with me 1 second here.
We begin with breaking news as we come on the air in the west tonight. A wildfire burning in San Bernardino County, east of Los Angeles. And take a look at this. Hundreds of acres burning, then jumping the freeway. Cars right there catching fire. Multiple ambulances sent to the scene.
Tonight, we're going to bring you rare, exclusive access deep into the hot zone as firefighters in the west make a desperate stand.
Fire behavior really picked up this morning, and as you can see, the wind is driving it quite a bit. It's chewing through a lot of vegetation, a lot of trees to the south and to the west. The structures are threatened. The fire could be here anytime, and we're working hard to gel the structures and get defensible space around some of these structures in the hopes of saving them as the fire comes through.
Approximately 2 to 3 structures involved. Reports of people trapped.
Dozer 1, Bravo, attack. Go ahead. Okay, Gary, with the fire behavior, I'm not feeling good about this. I want you to bump back out to the road, and we're going to try to find another target up canyon.
Okay, so of course, a lot of us have seen the news, and we know you know the effort it takes to put out a wildfire. But hopefully, you can see that you know the Southern California has a long history with wildfires that are massive and destructive. Some of the reasons why is because of the fuel types we have here, and also too the development that we have. We have a lot of what's called urban wildland interface, and so that's what that's homes that are built in the forest or near the forest or just near heavily vegetated areas. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of take you on a tour. I meant to do this out in the field, but I'm going to take you on a virtual tour. I've got a video, and there's a community in our district, and I'm just going to use that as an example for showing you some of the things that we look for when it comes to defensible homes, defensible communities. So if we could have that video played right now. And hopefully it's not too, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm fine. I just want to make sure the sound was there. There you go.
All right. Hopefully it's not too grainy there for you. Okay, so just going up a tour. This is a community located obviously on a huge hill, and as you can see as we drive through, you can see the types of fuel we have and the slope of the hillside there, and the continuity of the fuel, which is just a prime example of an area where it's very fire prone. You can see as we drive up the road. Hopefully you can see it, make it out a little bit. This road is, varies from about 20 to 22 feet and all the way down, lower than 22 feet, maybe 16 to 18. So, which is okay, but, in this kind of community, we really need wider roads. But because it's an older community, we don't have that. So this is one of interest to us here at County Fire. You can see that some of the folks don't have a garage, at least a garage setback from the house or a driveway. So they use the street for parking. They have no choice. And so we have to account for that as well. It's also one way in, one way out community, which is really tough when it comes to getting fire equipment up into the community and then also the residents out in an emergency. So as we're driving up, we can see the, again, the slope. We can see, the homes that there's really no fuel modification zone around the community unless we actually put one there. Interestingly enough, not only have we cleared the fuel with hand crews and heavy, we've also cleared the fuel with goats. We have a goat grazing project that we do. We did one in 2020. We hope to do it again in 2022, this next spring. We use goats to graze the hillside. Had about right around 40 acres that we did, and it was really effective. You notice the slopes are so severe. Goats are perfect for navigating that, and of course they eat a lot. A herd of goats can graze about an acre a day, so it works really good. Here we are on the top of the hill. You can see kind of the elevation here. We're way high up, a couple hundred feet. As we start cruising on down, one of the things that you may notice is, we don't have a lot of fire hydrants here. Again, older community, and the water supply is limited. What fire hydrants we do have are what we call Jones heads or blow-off heads. So they don't provide as much water as we would like. We really want about 500 gallons a minute. 1,000 gallons a minute is preferred. There you go. You can see it on the right there. That's the Jones Head hydrant. This is another little side street, and just as narrow, really, as our main street. Limited ability to turn around too. So, you know, a lot of times, even for a medical emergency, a fire engine has to make a 3-point turn. And it's difficult getting out. Even I myself, I think I didn't turn wide enough, and I think I'm going to back up here. So as you can see, it's narrow. Another thing you'll notice about the homes in here, if you can make it out, you know, a lot of wood siding, a lot of raised foundations. You know, the old style building homes as opposed to slab on grade. So, you know, room for embers to get caught underneath foundation in some areas. We did lose some homes here. Some of them are not been rebuilt yet. We had some major fires here where we lost several homes. There's one right there off to the right that's still not been rebuilt. And there's one up there to the left that is being rebuilt. So, and so as we cruise on down, our video is going to end here in a little bit. So hopefully this really is illustrated to you all, really kind of how, you know, the way that a community is laid out and the way the homes are built really makes or breaks it when it comes to survivability and defensibility in a fire. Okay, thank you. So I'll just talk a little bit about defensible space and why it's so important, and then we'll talk a little bit about structure hardening. I'm gonna try to share my screen so we can have some photos, some visual aids here. Let's see here. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, we can see it, Adam.
Okay, good. All right, so, you know, you picture off to the left, picture off to the right, you can see defensible space makes a big difference. You know, we're going to have other presenters here that are going to talk a little bit more about it, but, you know, everyone knows that tier or zone 1, 2, and 3, the 5 feet, 30 feet, and 100 feet. So in this picture, you know, you have a very vulnerable structure, but, you know, you have some clearance of the fuel, and, you know, it survived you know, a ground, you know, a surface fuel fire. Didn't get up to be an aerial fuel fire, but it did survive. So that's you know, a testament to defensible space. As we mentioned, access roads, that's a big, that's really a big thing. And it's difficult to fix that when it's an older community. Some of the things that we can do is we can look at areas where we can do what's called turnabouts. You kind of, you know, this is kind of a serpentine road here, but you can carve out maybe about a 20 to 25 foot long by about 6 to 8 feet wide area where a car can pull into or a fire engine can pull into, and another one can safely pass. So it becomes more like, makes a one-way street into a two-way street. So, and those are required actually in some codes, in SRA and forested areas actually. Water supply, I mentioned the 500 gallons a minute minimum, 1,000 gallons a minute was preferred. We also have water tanks that can supply water supply for firefighting purposes. Some homes have them just to protect the home, maybe in an isolated area. Some communities have a very small water distribution system that has a small tank and maybe feeds about 4 or 5 different houses. You know, a lot of rural areas up in Northern California, and some rural areas were in our county too, where we have just old insufficient water systems. We have to augment them with tanks and pumps. And if you guys have any questions about that, you can ask me afterward, and because we do get a lot of questions about how to put in a tank if you live in an area where you don't have a very good water supply. And off to the right, a little a Jones Head, another close-up example of what it looks like. And those are what we see a lot, and really they're not much use to us. Addressing, this is something that everyone can do, even in an existing home. If you have an older home that doesn't have an illuminated address, you could either wire an illuminated address. If you don't have the electricity there, you can get a battery operated one. Or maybe if you have electricity outside, you can wire a sign, maybe near the front of the property or at the driveway. So that really helps emergency responders. A lot of times it's those precious seconds that we need to be able to get you out. That having that illuminated address helps. We have GPS now, we have maps, and of course computer mapping and all kinds of things, but the address really is something that makes a difference. So talk a little bit about structure hardening. One of the most important things, and what we'll start with, is the roof. As you can see here, this is a Class A roof. It's what we call a fire and ember resistive roof. This is the best kind of Class A roof, which is concrete tile. It's completely non-combustible. There's also other alternatives. They're not as effective. But for those folks that live in mountain areas or want some alternative that is not concrete tile, they are available. I had the opportunity to attend this test that was done here in our county, and it's the testing of fire resistive impregnated wood roofing. And so when they did the test, they were exposing the roofing to several hundred degrees for several minutes, and then by the end of it, they were looking for how much flame impingement there was, how much flame spread there was, what the depth of char was, and if it passed certain criteria. And there's testing standards in the ICC, in the building code actually. They met that certain testing standard, then it could be considered a Class A roof. Again, it's something that it's not allowed in all areas. Actually, in San Bernardino County, if you're in certain areas, you're not allowed to have a treated wood roof. You have to have the non-combustible, non-organic material, like clay or tile, or metal. But in some areas, you might be able to use that. So you want to check with your local fire department. Eaves are very important. They're a prime place for embers to go underneath the eave and go into very small cracks and crevices and sit there and just kind of cook for a little bit. We have examples of where we have wildfires in San Bernardino County where we have a house about a mile away from where the fire line is, where the where the area that's burning, and the one home will be completely destroyed. It's because the embers blew and they traveled several hundred feet and they ended up underneath an eave, and they got in there and they started smoldering, and then the eave caught fire and burned the entire house down. And it's because the owner of the house, resident, was evacuated. They weren't there to do anything about it. And I know I'm not trying to encourage people to stay in their homes and try to wet their house down and protect them from embers or anything like that. Much better to harden your home and do what this picture shows, which is to box in the eave, cover it with non-combustible or limited combustible material, like maybe drywall, and then stucco over that, or lath and plaster, or wood and plaster. So that's what this example is. It's not a very good photo, but it's what I could find. Here's another example of boxed eaves. These are ember resistive vents here for the eave, and that's just the way they've set it up here. This is a newer home, but as we can see, this is going to be very fire and ember resistant. There's nothing really it's going to be able to catch under here. And even in the fascia, I mean, that's just really tight. There's really no space for an ember. and it definitely can't get in here. So very protected. These are the E-vents are really critical. So the E-vents that the building code requires and that we recommend, and you can replace them in your home. A lot of times you see underneath where the rafter tails are coming out, you see those 3 holes, you know, there's mesh behind that, those holes. That's your attic venting. You can replace that mesh with, well, a product like this, which is, this mesh is very tight. It catches embers. It has mesh over mesh actually, and it catches the embers before they go inside. It resists what we call ember intrusion. Here's an example of it. This is something you can buy at Lowe's. That's where I got it from. So you can see the design of the mesh. And then, you know, you can screw that right over the where the vent holes are, or make a new vent and close up the old ones. There's different ways that you can do it. And if you're handy, you can do it, or you can call a contractor to have that done. These are gutter guards. So one of the biggest vulnerabilities homes have for fire and embers is the gutters. Now, we all know that if you're like me, you don't clean your gutters out very often. And I don't live in a very forested area, but I do have a lot of trees, and the dead leaves get in there. And so, you know, if there was an ember that lights in there, it's going to go. So these gutter guards prevent that. And they prevent the leaves from actually getting in. A little bit more maintenance, you have to remove them. But you'd be surprised with that mesh there, preventing leaves from getting in and preventing embers from getting in. They really do work. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the exterior walls, flame and ember resistant. Here's another photo of the testing that they do. The one on the right is concrete fiberboard. So it's actually a concrete product that looks like siding. The one on the left is wood siding, obviously. So you can see, you know, exposed to a flame test, you know, you can see how they perform. So here again, this is a flame test that they do in a testing facility, and they're testing fire resistive impregnated material, wood. There's a lot of testing that goes on. The one thing though, everyone should consider is, you know, when you have a flame treated wood product, you know, there's a warranty on that. It's only going to last for so long. You're better off going with limited combustible or non-combustible, like concrete fiberboard, metal, or those materials. Decks. So as you can see here, this very old wood dried out. So if you had embers, they could easily go underneath this deck. And you know, there's a lot of cracks and crevices there. They get in there, they start cooking. And if that deck goes, the house is going to go because it's attached to the house. And all decks are really built this way, or most of them. They have an area underneath. So what we encourage people to do, and what the building code now requires for people in fire-prone areas, is to build with non-combustible, or excuse me, fire-resistive decking material. There's products called Trex, and that's not the only product though. There's a lot of other products now available, and it uses a resin, and it handles like wood. It comes together like wood, but it's not wood, and it's very, very fire and ember resistant. You can see even the railing here is metal. So this is a very fire and ember resistive deck. So if you're going to replace your deck, this is the way to go. It's more money, honestly, but you know, usually safety does cost more money. So something to consider. If you have an old deck and you have, you know, you want to do an outdoor fireplace or something like that, you know, everybody wants to do that once in a while for warmth. There's fire resistive deck mats. And that's just something that, you know, gives you peace of mind, because those things are hot. or maybe they crackle and pop a little bit, and you know, if it's left unattended, it could be a problem. So those deck mats really help. Accessory structures. So the accessory structures, there's a distance you want to have against from the main building. I've heard figures of 20 to 25 feet. That's about right, depending upon the size of the accessory structure. For instance, this is a shed. It could also be, you know, a secondary dwelling, mother-in-law quarters or something like that. And there's setbacks required by local building and planning departments. But if you have even a shed, a wood shed, and you could relocate it, consider putting it away from the house, 20 to 25 feet. I mean, if you look at the combustibility of this building, I mean, once it goes, it's gonna impinge on the house. So I want to talk a little bit now about two programs that we have. And I know that other departments, CAL FIRE included, and other fire departments across Southern California have a similar program. We call it Ready, Set, Go. And with Ready, Set, Go, it's basically a toolkit. It helps you create a wildfire action plan. It talks a lot about defensible space, where again, you have that zone 1, 2, and 3. It explains home hardening, like I just went into. It provides a lot more information. I just gave it kind of a quick overview of what structure hardening and fire and ember resistive construction is, but it gives you more information there, and also how to prepare an evacuation plan. So that's on our website at sbcfire.org. Another program we have is the RAP program, Residential Assessment Program. And this is a educational and outreach program as well. It's not a regulatory program, but what you can do is you can call, you know, in this case for us, Office of the Fire Marshal, where I work, and then we'll schedule you an inspection for an engine company to visit you and at your convenience and do a courtesy inspection of the house, kind of see where your property measures up to the requirements in for the Public Resources Code, which requires defensible space, you know, and if it's clearance from chimneys, clearance from the structure with the vegetation, the appropriate, you know, height for bushes and stuff and the dead vegetation, they can take a look at all of that. And this is the check sheet that they use. Or you can get this check sheet yourself and do your own RAP inspection. And again, sbcfire.org is where you'll find it. So at this point, I want to talk about some other really great things that people can get involved in and do if they really want to make a difference in promoting fire safety in their community. Talked a lot about outreach, community outreach, and one of the things that we work very closely with are the folks at our local fire safe councils. California has a fire safe council, and if I could ask Jessica to pop up here, and she's going to join me, and I'm going to ask her a couple of questions. She can explain. Hi, Jessica.
Sorry, I have my daughter here, so I don't want to share my screen or my video.
Oh, that's okay. No problem. We can hear you. So.
Okay.
So I was just talking about fire safe councils and how important they are. Jessica is the president of the East Little Mountain Fire Safe Council in San Bernardino, and you know, again, very wildfire prone community. So Jessica, you want to just kind of explain what you do and the role of the Fire Safe Council is in our county here?
Yeah. I'm new to all this still, but with the help of Adam and people like Laura Dyberg from Mountain Rim Fire Safe Council, they're helping us establish our own Fire Safe Council. The second video you saw was actually our hill. Today is actually the anniversary of the second big fire that we had in 2019. So as one of my neighbors pointed out, good things come from bad situations, and with those two big fires that we had, this Fire Safe Council was able to get started. And I think the biggest and best thing about the Fire Safe Council is it really brought us together as a community. I think before all the fires happened, we had just moved into the neighborhood, but most of the neighbors didn't know each other, down the street. They probably just knew the neighbor to the side of them or across from them. So I really felt like it brought us together as a community, and it really helped us get to know each other and help us be more fire safe. We did like a community cleanup day one year. Anybody who was able to come out just came out of their house. We got a big dumpster from Vertec and just started loading it up with brush. So really just bringing community together and helping to prevent the fires from happening. I know Adam and Laura Dyberg have really educated us on how to be more fire safe and making those connections with our first responders. It really kind of puts the ball in your court. As much as the city of San Bernardino can be a great resource, we can't always rely on that. I think some of the code enforcement have been great, but it's for our structure and the way our hill is, it's just not enough to protect us. We need more than the required amount that the city has for, any normal flat structure that's not on a hill. If you saw in the video, a lot of our neighbors were kind of stacked. So the neighbor to the right of me is above me. The neighbor to the left of me is lower than me. We're all on the same street. It's just we're stacked on top of each other a little bit. So if a bush catches fire between the neighbor above me, that bush can set my roof on fire. So it's a little bit different than what the city requires. So through the Fire Safe Council, we're able to get a lot more done and rely on each other to help keep us safe.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. And just real quick, if someone wanted to get involved in a local fire safe council?
For me, I reached out to the city fire abatement. So through there, somebody told me about Laura Dyberg. So I would say you can start by going that route, or you can just, go on the internet, look for any local fire safe councils that are already established and try to connect with them. And even if they're out of state, maybe you can call them and then they can put you in the right direction. Start attending your local city council meetings, because that does affect your community a lot. Fireworks are illegal in our area, but a lot of people still do them anyways, and it's really hard to stop it. But, San Bernardino Fire and San Bernardino Police Department did an excellent job last year, or actually this year and last year, with trying to keep it down. So if you attend those meetings, you really get more information on how you can help report that, and that'll really keep you safe.
All right. Thank you very much, Jessica. I appreciate you,
Thank you.
being here with us and sharing that. So at this point, I just want to thank Ben and his team for allowing us to be here, and I'll go ahead and turn it back over. And I thank you guys very much for your attention.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Jessica. Adam, there's some good questions that have come into the chat. We may try to get to some of them a little later, but if you could answer some of them in the chat if possible. I want to keep things moving so we don't get far behind here. But we want to make sure we get all the questions answered. And as a reminder, we will have some breakouts later where you can ask some of these questions one-on-one. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Doug Williams with the Wildwood Watchers Firewise Community in Yucaipa. So Doug, over to you.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening, everyone. My name is Douglas Williams. I am a community member of the Wildwood area, which, for those of you unfamiliar, is Yucaipa, California. We are about 20 miles east of the city of San Bernardino. I like to tell my relatives about halfway between LA and Palm Springs. You can throw a dart at the map and figure out where we are. My particular community has a very large presence of fuels due to the fact that we're at about 3,200 feet elevation. We're above the city of Yucaipa and just below the city of Oakland. For those of you not familiar with Oakland, if you paid attention last year to the fires, the El Dorado or the Apple fire, they pretty much surrounded the city. of Oakland, that community. And fortunately, we were not directly affected by those fires, but we were evacuated for 5 days in our neighborhood. So it was a very trying time for us. One of the things that I had been doing was I had been in contact with our local fire chief, who for our city, we are a CAL FIRE contracted city, meaning the city pays CAL FIRE to fulfill the fire services and emergency services for us. And so I communicated with CAL FIRE and I asked, what can we do to make our area safer? If there is ever a fire in our area, it's going to be devastating because of the amount of fuels and the lack of fuel reduction that's been done. And so our fire chief, Grant Malinowski, and I got together, and his first suggestion was to start a Firewise community. We've been talking a lot about Fire Safe Council. Fire Safe Council and Firewise are two different entities after the same goals, but approaching it from kind of different angles. The Firewise community is something that he and I started, and we successfully integrated the community into becoming a Firewise community with the help of our local CAL FIRE forester, Mr. David Haas, who joins us today. Very exciting. And he came out to the area, and we had to do basically an inspection of the neighborhood, and just kind of using a checklist that Firewise provides, go through and see what the houses look like in terms of, are they hardened? How much defensible space has been created? What are our specific issues to our neighborhood? And we were accepted in the Firewise community, and that opens up a lot of doors. And I think the biggest door for us is the communication. Even though I was already in contact with our local fire chief, it opens up a lot more communication in terms of making others known that you need to be a priority in terms of the amount of danger that's here. And having our local firefighters and community leaders out to our neighborhood to see where the hydrants are located and where the egress and ingress routes are, and what are some of our maybe more dangerous areas in terms of the canyons and the vegetation and the potential for strong winds to come through. And although a lot of the firefighters already know the area, to have them actually physically visit and see where the hydrants are and see where the access is, I think helps out a lot in terms of, if there was a fire event, then they know already kind of some of those areas that are going to need a little more attention, so to speak. So I prepared a video today. I'm going to go ahead and try to present it, and it shows you it's quite a bit of drone footage and also some footage of home hardening and not home hardening, to see kind of where we are and what our specific issues are. So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen now. And I can't see anybody else. So Ben, is everything okay? Looking okay?
We can see your screen, and it looks like the video is coming up right now. Hopefully you clicked the share sound button.
I did.
Perfect.
I did hit that. So if I'm going to go ahead and start the video, for some reason it's not, just chime in and let me know to stop it and start over.
You got it.
All right, here we go.
With the current trend of drier and hotter temperatures year-round here in Southern California, those of us who live in the wildland-urban interface have been forced to harden our homes and lands to wildfire or face severe consequences. Even those who have reduced fuels still lose their homes and loved ones during fire events. What was once very desirable land for outdoor public use has become a ticking time bomb of oaks, junipers, and eucalyptus ready to explode, the potential heat and embers of which would likely cause spontaneous combustion of everything around it. The canopy is thick and full of dead branches. The ground is the same. Not all is lost though. With proper fuel reductions and trimming, this area could withstand a fire blowing through without torching off the trees and creating the heat and embers that take out neighborhoods. Many homeowners have already done several things to reduce the fuels around their homes. According to the Firewise program, home brush clearance is divided into 3 ignition zones. Zone 1 is from the house to 5 feet, Zone 2 is from 5 feet to 30 feet, and Zone 3 is from 30 feet to 100 feet or beyond. Some dedicated homeowners have already trimmed trees off the ground, removed dead vegetation, and completely eliminated combustible materials from all of these zones. Home hardening can be defined as addressing the most vulnerable components of your house with building materials and installation techniques that increase resistance to heat, flames, and embers that accompany most wildfires. Items that are considered include roofing materials, soffit fence, siding and skirting, decking and attachments, windows, and gutters, to name a few. Some of the newer homes in our neighborhood have already employed these construction techniques and materials to build a quote-unquote fireproof house. Here is one example. One of the issues that homeowners can face is how to deal with common areas or public lands that are adjacent to their own. Homeowners can face obstacles that prevent them from creating fuel breaks and ignition-free zones. In this video, you can see the border between the state park and the private residences. The park has been approached multiple times to reduce the fuels in this area, but their stance is that they will leave it natural. Here you can see power poles that supply an energized line to a house that is no longer occupied. This presents a huge fire risk that is completely unnecessary. If there was a fire right now, what would stop it from reaching the homes? What will this area look like after a fire rages through? What about the animals? What about the oak trees that are hundreds of years old that bring in people from faraway areas to study them? It is good policy for everyone to reduce the fuels and save the animals, the trees, the homes, and the people. We continue to work to change the mindset of the entities that refuse to address the potential for disaster. But we need all the help and support we can find. Thanks for watching and best of luck.
All right, so that video gives you kind of a good example of what the neighborhood looks like and some of the challenges that we're currently facing. One of the great things that came out of the Firewise program for me, and I think this is something that David had suggested, was that every year try to take a bigger bite. In other words, right now I have the backyard of my fence is up against the state park, but I have a slope between the actual border of my property and the top of the fence. And that's where the vegetation begins. And his suggestion was every year, take a chunk, take 20 feet, 10, 20 feet, and just every year get a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And that's been really successful for me personally, that I think I'm down to my 30 or 40 feet now that I've done it. And it's a lot of work getting that vegetation. And for us too, it's full of poison oak. And I found out that I'm horribly allergic to it several times, which is no fun at all. And so every time I go in there, it's almost unavoidable. Even if I suit up and do as best I can, I get some sort of poison oak contact, whether it be that day or maybe even a week later. So it can be very, very challenging. The same is true with the the house itself, when I moved into this house 10 years ago, it didn't have hardly any fire resistance at all. And there's a lot of wood structuring in the back. There's open soffits around the house. And so one of the first things I did was box up the eaves and put in some cement board to stop any embers, go through and like Adam said, cover those vents. We've seen so many fires where just one tiny spark gets into an attic, and that little fire starts, it's tiny, and next thing you know, the whole house is gone. And so it always, it starts small, and little things like that you can do to prevent those embers and sparks from coming in your residence is going to be a huge factor, especially if you're not there. Another thing that I've done is I ran a 2-inch hose line around the rear of my structure, and I plumbed it into my pool. So worst case scenario, I have a gas pump completely independent of everything else in my house that I can fire up, and it'll pump that water around the outside of my structure. I have a real short video. I'd like to see if I can share that real quick. All right. Let's see if this one will play. Okay, I guess it's not. Oh, there we go. Kind of hard to see, but it's basically a 2-inch PVC line around the rear of the house, and it has holes drilled in it, 1/8-inch holes every 6 inches or so. And again, not the best video, but it covers the whole rear of the house in kind of a solid sheet of water, which again, worst case scenario, I could start the hose, and if we had to evacuate or start the pump, I'm sorry. Another thing that we've done also with that line is I have the option to pull out. I have 2.5-inch hose line. I've got 150 feet, and I have a Y so that I have I can split it up. So if I was at the house and there was a fire that I could fight, that same pump pulls right out of the pool. And with a 2.5-inch hose at about 100 PSI, I can almost shoot the entire canyon behind my house. It goes pretty far, which isn't really going to help me in terms of a fire. If there is a fire, I'm pretty much waiting for it to come to the house, and then I'm going to, attack it is kind of the plan that the firefighters, the neighbors, and myself have come up with. But to have the ability to reach a long distance with a lot of water, I think is also very helpful if you have that ability. And the last thing that we've done is we purchased, as a neighborhood, we purchased 2 foam backpacks, which again, you do need a water source. It can be a hose line, or like we've done where we have gas pumps that are portable now. But basically, this is a backpack that a person can wear, and it has a foam in it that I believe it protects the house up to from 4 to 6 hours after application. This is a short video here that shows a demonstration that we did in the neighborhood during one of our Firewise meetings of my neighbor Dale pulling water from his pool and showing us. I'm going to just fast forward a little bit so you can see the hose in action. Here he's showing the backpack, I guess if you call it backpack, pack, and he's treating the vegetation behind his house.
That is so basically
he also does a real quick demonstration where he has some leaves that he pre-treated, I think like an hour before the demonstration, and he shows you the difference between the pre-treated leaves and the non. By the way, the pre-treated leaves are on the right side and the non-treated leaves are on the left side. So you can see on the right side, even though he kept the heat on that thing for 30 seconds, that it pretty much goes out right afterwards. On the left side, you can see the flame lakes are 2-3 times what it was on the right side, and it doesn't stop burning once he stops. So I'll just play a little bit more of that. So it's a good example of something else that you might be able to do to prepare yourself in case of an event that comes your way. So I think that's pretty much all I have in terms of what I wanted to share with the group. Ben, did you want to ask me some questions, or did we want to have David do his portion?
Why don't we bring David on right now, and then I can just ask you two a couple of questions, and then David can showcase some of his stuff before we transition to our next portion. So with that, I'd like to introduce David Haas as well. I don't know if you want to say a couple words, David, about you and CAL FIRE.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is David Haas, CAL FIRE San Bernardino Unit Forester. We cover San Bernardino, Inyo, and Mono counties. I'm a registered professional forester. Been working in forestry for 15-ish years now.
Thanks for joining us, David. And so just a couple of questions, because I know you two really work together on this, but you know, how did you organize as a community? How did this conversation start? Sounds like it's been pretty integrated between you two during this process.
Yeah, well, I kind of have a little bit of a hidden connection with David. I'm an airspace coordinator. In the summers, I help out with all of the aircraft in the fire, and that's how David and I met down at South Ops. I believe David was working Intel at the time, but we worked together on a couple of the fires and kind of became friends. And he's the one that asked me to participate with this group. But in terms of starting the community, the Firewise has a website. If you're interested in starting a Firewise community, that's the best place to start. It has a checklist on everything that you need to do. But at some point, you will need to be in contact with David because he's the one that has to do the inspections and sign off. Maybe if you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Firewise is an NFPA program. It's the National Fire Protection Administration. It's a nationwide organization. They set standards for all sorts of fire-related stuff. So Firewise is a voluntary program. Every state has a coordinator for Firewise. And so for California, it's CAL FIRE. Technically, it's our land use planning program. They are the official coordinators, but it is the responsibility of the local units to work with communities interested in becoming Firewise communities to do the assessments, develop an action plan. That's a key component of becoming a Firewise community. And again, just it's about making those connections with your local fire agencies and then them understanding what your concerns are and the community addressing their concerns to the local agency as well. So again, the initial, Grant Malinowski, he's the chief, as Doug mentioned, it was the three of us together that really made this happen. And this is only our second Firewise community in the San Bernardino unit. So there was still a little bit of a learning curve on our part too.
Well, it definitely sounds like something that more and more communities should be aware of and be trying to put in place. You touched a little bit on this in your video, Doug, but maybe the two of you could talk a little about these issues of private land abutting public land and kind of what do you do when you're next to a national park or state park or city-owned land? What are some of the things people should be doing to address that?
Yeah, I'll take that. There's not really a great answer for that other than be a thorn in the side of those agencies, so we see this a lot in the San Bernardino Mountains where a lot of properties butt up against national forest. And I hear about this similarly in LA County butting up against the Angeles National Forest, where homeowners are doing their defensible space and their due diligence, but just on the other side of their property line, the national forests or the parks or whomever are not doing the same amount of work that you are. And as Doug mentioned in his video, state parks mission is essentially leave it be, leave it natural. And at that point, there is not a lot that you can do other than explore whatever opportunities those agencies are willing to provide you to try to do some fuel reduction in those areas. We're working with state parks to see what we can do. We're working with national forests to see what we can do in the San Bernardino Mountains. And that's another place where fire safe councils, which are nonprofits recognized by the IRS, a little bit different than the Firewise program where it is, just a voluntary program where the community gets together, but there's no official designation as a nonprofit, and just apply pressure to your local government agency to see what kind of assistance they can provide, and then to the land management agency with whom you're trying to work.
I think though we are seeing a little bit of change of opinion because of the change of climate and the continued drier and hotter temperatures. Where I found an article, I want to say it was last fall, where some of the state parks in Northern California are starting to do prescribed burns and have plans for fuel reduction. It's starting to make its way down, and especially because of the larger fires and the political pressure. To be honest, that's going to be helping us the most in terms of, we need to put some more pressure on them, that they have to do something about this. And there is a liability as well. I think that that's another thing to be brought up, is what is the liability if something starts on, let's say, the state park and takes out your house, or God forbid would hurt someone, or possibly kill someone. What is the liability in terms of how they need to prepare or do some fuel reduction so that it doesn't spread past their borders?
And to your point, Doug, the good news is we've seen, record budgets passed this last year to really support, that type of increased focus on forest management and increased legislation around disclosure and other items. So hopefully we'll see more of that pressure come to bear. And it sounds like one of the best things you can do is really just get organized, right? And have a collective voice, in that discussion. Well, thank you, Doug. David, do you want to share a few things just around creating defensible space really quickly before we go to our next speaker?
Let me throw up a little bit here. Okay, I'm gonna do my best. So before I go into that, just real quick, when I discuss defensible space, I like to touch on this topic very briefly, because especially in the San Bernardino Mountains, you could have multiple agencies come conduct defensible space inspections on your property. And so I like to, kind of clarify who does what in terms of fire response throughout the state. So it's called a responsibility area, federal, state, and local. So anything owned by the federal government, National Forest, National Park, Department of Defense, BLM, whatever, federal responsibility area. They are responsible for fire suppression in those areas. Local responsibility areas is pretty much any annexed city. So that's where, Burbank, San Bernardino City, whatever, those are local responsibility areas. The rest of that is state responsibility area, where CAL FIRE has the responsibility for wildland fire suppression. And so CAL FIRE works a lot with San Bernardino County Fire, because San Bernardino County is responsible for suppression of structure fires, essentially, in the state responsibility areas, and CAL FIRE is responsible for suppression of wildland fires in those areas. So CAL FIRE can come out and do a defensible space inspection within SRA to CAL FIRE's defensible space standards. Your local agency, like San Bernardino County, can have rules and regulations above and beyond what's required by the state regulations. So you could have San Bernardino County Fire come out and do I think they call them hazard abatement inspections, essentially looking at the same stuff, maybe with a little more scrutiny. So that's why sometimes it gets confusing. They say, well, I just had somebody out here yesterday. Well, now you got CAL FIRE, and usually we come to the same conclusion. So again, I just like to throw that out in the very beginning. Then let me share this screen. So moving on here. I assume you can all see that.
We can see it. Yeah, it looks good on our end.
Cool. So defensible space and fuel reduction.
We are seeing, just so you know, we are seeing the slide, the presenter version, which is, it's okay. I mean, we can make it out still, but just so you know.
Okay, yeah, I'm not. I had grandiose ideas for making this very fancy, and I realized I am not that savvy. And it's recording my voice, so
it's okay.
All right, so defensible space, in terms of CAL FIRE, we've got public resource code that gives us the authority to do defensible space inspections. That's 4291. You may hear that code section frequently when you're dealing with defensible space. And then we've got the California Code of Regulation that actually creates those regulations which we enforce. And so that's section 1299.03. And this is where CAL FIRE lives, in this long detail here. Essentially, any wildland area becomes state responsibility area, to make it simplistic as possible. And this is the obligate graphic of defensible space that you see in all the materials provided. And I threw it up there, and I looked at USGBC-CA's toolkit that they advertised earlier in the presentation, and it's great. They do a great job of condensing all those different resources and information into a single resource. So I am definitely going to take advantage of that in the future. So as we mentioned, right, as per state law, that 0 to 5 foot ember resistant zone is not actually enforceable by public resource code yet. Assembly Bill 3074 was passed last year, creating that 0 to 5 foot ember resistant zone, but that doesn't go into effect until 2023, because that was passed in the peak of COVID, and essentially the state didn't want to create a financial burden on folks trying to comply with this new regulation while the economy was in such an unstable condition. So they essentially pushed that back till 2023. In terms of the state standards, again, your local agency could have that as part of their code already. So I can't speak to that, but again, in that 0 to 30 foot zone, we'll call it now, you want to remove any dead vegetation, remove dead branches that overhang the roof, remove branches 10 feet from the chimney, create spacing between trees, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail, then move any wood piles outside of that 0 to 30 foot zone, remove flammable vegetation from underneath decks, balconies, stairs, and Adam did a great job going through the home hardening stuff. So in that 30 to 100 foot zone, cut the grasses, and it says cut annual grasses down to a maximum height of 4 inches. So I guess if you have a perennial grass, you don't have to do it. Maybe they didn't go into that level of thought or detail when they wrote that code, but so be it. And it comes down to creating spacing between the vegetation in this 30 to 100 foot zone. Because I also remind people, defensible space is there to protect your home from a wildfire, but it's also there to protect our wildland from your structure fire, right? So creating that 0 to 5 foot zone and some of the regulations that Adam touched on in terms of setbacks and ingress and egress and stuff, that's also to make sure that we reduce the chance for structure to structure ignition in the event that your home catches on fire. So this is, I don't know if it's how easy it is to see this graphic, but it's kind of some rules of thumb for spacing of materials. And that's why I say defensible space and fuel reduction are essentially the same thing. The defensible space standards you use around your home are essentially the same thing we use when developing and implementing a fuel reduction project on a much larger scale, right? We've got slightly different objectives, but it comes down to removing the total mass of vegetation and then creating space between the remaining vegetation to moderate fire behavior, right? We'll never get rid of fire. Fire will always be a part of life for us. So we just want to create areas where we can influence the rate of spread of fire and also provide an opportunity for fire personnel to safely engage directly, which is the most effective way to suppress a fire. So again, it's based on slope and height of vegetation. And if you go to the toolkit that USGBC-CA has created, you'll be able to get these graphics. So, I won't hit on it too much, but just keep in mind that does vary with slope, vegetation types, and vegetation heights. And that's really the key, is the height of the vegetation. And so we have a couple different kinds of fuels. Surface fuels, which are that surface litter that lays on the ground, pine needles, dead branches and stuff. We've got ground fuels, which you can think of as your ground covers. If you're driving down the freeway, the acacia and the ice plant and stuff that you see that Caltrans has. Then we've got ladder fuels, which is really what we're trying to avoid, because that's what carries the fire from the surface and ground fuels up into that fourth fuel type, the aerial fuels, which are tree canopies, larger shrubs, and so on. So we want to create a gap between those ground and surface fuels and those aerial fuels, because that's when we go from a low intensity ground fire to those high intensity crown fires that spread very quickly, can very easily take out homes, but a little bit of a bias as a forester, it also has a very detrimental effect on forest health. And that's what we try to balance is, people are going to live in these wildland urban interfaces and in forested settings. That's never going to go away in the foreseeable future, as far as I can tell. So we have to figure out that balance of protecting forests and forest health and protecting homes and structures and life safety. So then for our fuel reduction projects, we typically remove all vegetation within the drip line of conifers primarily, and oaks too. Sometimes the oaks are like big shrubs, especially in the San Bernardino mountains. But, in your home setting, you may not want to do that, right? So it's a matter of creating spacing between those surface and ground fuels and the aerial fuels. And again, it's dependent on the height of vegetation and also the slope, but you can have a shrub underneath your tree. It's dependent on the type of vegetation, but you just need to create a gap between those two fuels. So if a fire does come through, we avoid that transition to a crown fire. I already touched on that. So then I've just got some pictures of good and bad defensible space, and it touches a little bit on home hardening as well. But, so grass is not a bad thing. It's as long as you keep it green and managed well. You can see there's very little vegetation underneath the deck here. They have some trees and shrubs. They're just well spaced. It's pretty flat plot, so that makes it easy. So here's a bad example. Maybe you don't need all these trees ringing your cabin here. The wood siding, you can see you've got a wood pile up against a house with wood siding. Probably not a great combination there. You've got a wood deck with pine needles on it. And you've got some other down and woody material directly adjacent to your home. You've got dead branches right next to a very well used chimney. So, I mean, you pretty much did everything wrong at this property. Same thing here. You got vegetation growing on the structure, wood stairs, wood siding, tall grass, trees right up next to the house. And not to say that you can't have trees right up next to your house. Again, you just need to maintain them properly and keep them healthy and growing vigorous, because that's really the only way to properly manage a tree in a wildland setting. LP tank right next to the structure. So a lot of bad things going on here. A good example, right? So a tree right next to a house, it's healthy. There's no dead material. I don't know if I'd plant a deodar cedar right next to my house like that, but from the defensible space point of view, they've done a lot of the right things here. They do have some shrubs right underneath the window. So when that 0 to 5 foot ember resistant zone law comes into effect, that will need to be removed. But even if that didn't go into effect, in general, you don't want to have flammable materials directly below or adjacent to a window, because radiant heat can very easily travel through that, even with double pane. Triple pane, maybe a little less. So here, steep slope, again, very thick vegetation, no clearing whatsoever. I mean, this is just a disaster waiting to happen here. So again, the slopes make it very challenging. You have your decks built on wood stilts over here. But again, fire moves more quickly uphill because that convective heat is preheating the fuels higher up slope. So, you can, just a bad situation there. This was from the Big Bear area. Again, I apologize. I am not a great photographer. Doug was excellent in his video. I feel my picture's not that good, but same things, the vegetation next to the home, the dead material. This has wood siding and stuff, so I captured this for a home hardening little talk as well. So just the general ideas, how you implement some of these things. And I'd say this is the opposite extreme, right? So we don't want to totally denude the hillside, because slope stability and soil erosion is always an issue, especially if you live near a water course. So, they've just completely removed all vegetation next to these homes. Not that they can't, it's just that you could just as easily have islands of vegetation. That's how we try to manage it when we're doing fuel reduction projects, is that, you could have a clump of bushes, but then you just need to provide a suitable amount of spacing around that clump of bushes where there's little to no vegetation. And our rule of thumb is 2.5 times the vegetation height. But again, I would refer to those materials that I showed previously for spacing based on slopes. Here's another one, same thing. And lastly, so we are the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. Our moniker is CAL FIRE. One of my responsibilities is enforcing the California Forest Practice Rules. So that applies to commercial timber operations in the state. One of the things that frequently gets overlooked, especially in Southern California, where we just don't really have much in the way of logging or commercial timber, is that one of the things that is considered commercial timber operations is the conversion of land that is growing or is capable of growing commercial tree species to a non-timber growing use. And so where we see this most frequently in the San Bernardino Mountains is building a house, right? You buy an acre plot and you want to cut down all the trees and, you know, however big of an area to build your home. Well, you're now subject to the California Forest Practice Rules. And I've been working with the county to try to help bring awareness to this issue and increase our enforcement of this, but figured it was applicable to the U.S. Green Building Council because you may be working with people that want to build a home in a forested area. Just a heads up, you are subject to the California Forest Practice Rules, and you should reach out to your closest CAL FIRE forester. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Really quickly, I'm going to go to Dave from SE, and then we're going to go to Cassie from FormLA to close us out with some California native landscaping practices. Dave, you're going to have to unmute yourself now. There you go.
What's that?
Good. Yeah, we can hear you
okay now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, apologies for the first try. Nothing like talking to yourself for 5 minutes when someone, your audience, can't hear you. But I'm going to give you an abbreviated version of what I was sharing. First of all, great information on defensible space. As most of you are aware, SCE is very focused on vegetation management. You know, that's one of our primary wildfire risk mitigations that we're deploying, as well as covered conductor, and in some cases, a little bit of undergrounding. So a combination of all of that is helping to reduce the risk of wildfire. About a third of our service territory is in high fire threat district. So it's obviously very important for us, and we continue to focus in these areas. My real intent today was just to share with you some of the programs that we're offering to help customers to mitigate the impact of a PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoff event, where SCE and other utilities in the state will de-energize a circuit in order to prevent a potential ignition. And so when the conditions are right, and we have very scientific formulas and monitoring systems in place to monitor this, we will de-energize the line, which we know is extremely impactful to our customers. So it is a kind of a measure of last resort that we will use. Because of course, a wildfire that gets out of hand could be far more devastating than a loss of power for a short period of time. So given that, my focus at work, I kind of wear two hats. My day job is designing and implementing programs around mitigating the impact of a de-energization. And I'm going to talk just briefly about some of the programs. The other hat I wear is I'm part of our incident management team. And when we do activate, my responsibility, and I have a team of folks that support this, we go out into the communities to provide support to our customers. So they're typically in the fashion of our community crew vehicles, which are yellow and black trucks and vans that we send out with trained staff to provide community support during an event. And also we have brick and mortar sites, 65 of them across the service territory, where we provide services to help our customers. So with that, I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the programs. The most visible program we have is called the Critical Care battery backup program. And what we're doing here is targeting our customers who are income qualified and have a medical dependency on, or a life-threatening dependency on medical equipment, like an oxygen concentrator, for example. And what we've done, we implemented mid-year last year a program to offer a fully subsidized battery to these customers. We try to right-size the battery based on the customer's medical equipment. And there's really 3 levels of 1,500, 3,000, and a 6,000 Yeti Goal Zero battery, along with 200 watt portable solar panel suitcase that we provide to these customers that are in need. So far we've deployed about 5,700 batteries to these identified customers. We have a total population of about 15,000, so we still have a ways to go. We're doing outreach to try to get to all of those customers. Very important program. It's treating the most vulnerable, and it's really designed to help them to prepare for their next phase of their emergency preparedness procedures, right? So it's not intended to provide power to medical equipment for a long period of time. It'll get them through, a 6 to 8 hour de-energization so they can move into their next phase of emergency preparedness. And we make that clear. We train the customer on how to operate the equipment and set up the solar panels. That's one of our biggest programs. We have a couple others that I just wanted to mention. For all customers living in high fire threat districts, we're offering a couple of rebates to subsidize the cost of resiliency equipment in the form of a portable generator, typically propane or gas. Smaller generators, but we do offer rebates on larger as well. And it's for a customer that is not income qualified, there's a $200 rebate towards the purchase of a qualified generator. And if it's an income qualified customer, or medical baseline, we can go up to $500 on a rebate. The rebate amount will never exceed the cost of the product. So, if it's a $400 generator and it's an income qualified customer, we'll rebate the $400 amount, not $500, just to be clear. And then we also offer a $75 rebate on portable batteries. And these are typically smaller batteries, but they can be used to provide backup to your internet at home, emergency lighting, whatever appliance that the customer chooses to provide backup on. And so any customer in a high fire threat district can qualify for that $75 rebate. And you can do that, by the way, 5 times. So you can qualify for 5 battery rebates. On the generator, it's only 1 rebate per service account. In addition to these programs, there's a statewide program called Self-Generation Incentive Program, which is really a whole home battery to provide backup generation. There is a resiliency equity portion of that targeting customers in high fire threat districts. And so those are the main programs we're offering today. All of this information can be found on SCE's portal on our webpage, sce.com/PSPS/customer resources. And you can get there and it'll take you to the links to all the programs. And if anyone has any questions or would like to talk to me about any of this, I think Ben can probably share my email and I'm happy to follow up with all of you. In addition to that, we have a couple of small pilots we're running. We call one of them the Resiliency Zones pilot, where we're providing the installation of a transfer switch at a essential service like a grocery store or a gas station in a rural community. Now, Edison will bring out a portable generator to power that building during an outage, and we have locations in urban areas that we've identified. So I'm going to stop there. Appreciate everyone's time. And this is a great topic. I'm very, very passionate about it. And I know you are all some great information. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And if you could put the website in the chat, that'd be great. And then Dave will be one of our breakouts here after our last but not least speaker, which is Cassie Oyogi at FormLA. Cassie, over to you.
Yeah, hi everybody. First, big thanks to USGBC-CA. Everybody can see my opening slide here.
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. Just a big thanks to USGBC-CA for continuing to do this work and really just help the market transform with the times and do what's needed. And I'm happy to be here sharing what I know and maybe even filling in some gaps today. Let's see if my slide is going to forward here. Of course, I run into technical difficulty. There we go. It'll probably forward like 10 slides now because I just pressed it 10 times. So this presentation is born from a lot of personal experiences in my life. For one, my love and awe of nature since childhood. I've run a native plant and sustainable landscape company for over 25 years. I've evacuated myself multiple times. And because of all these things, I've worked with fire officials over many years to really simplify and clarify how to mitigate fire danger even further after we've hardened the home. And knowing what makes us most vulnerable is really the best starting point. And I think I'm going to be reiterating a few things, but hopefully bringing in a lot of new things as well. For instance, even as an evacuee in a wildland urban interface, I imagine my house burning from a firestorm raging down a fire path, leaving a wake of destruction behind it, when actually over 90% of structure fires happen from embers flying in from miles away. The second thing is our homes and the things we store immediately around our homes puts us in the greatest danger. So it all connects in that drought and heat have exacerbated our fire conditions in California, but does denuding the landscape make us safer, or is hardening our home and building a smart, defensible native landscape around it make us safer? So if we look at building a defensible landscape, we could be addressing more than just fire risk. We could really be dispelling myths about where we're most vulnerable so that we can be safer and make decisions that make our communities more resilient on a whole. So today, I'm going to go over 10 fire risk reducing landscape strategies. But if you can only hold on to a couple points, we need to first shift our mindset to an inside out thinking. You've heard hardening repeated multiple times today. Our homes are what are most vulnerable to fire. And we need to start there to protect our families and our properties most effectively. And secondly, using native foliage can reduce your risk and extend the defensible space around your home to protect it better. So one of the first strategies is not invasive. What is an invasive plant? It's a plant that's not only not native to our area, but it's a plant that readily propagates itself throughout our wildland areas. This is what we call a fine fuel. It propels fire very, very quickly. And frankly, in a lot of the video footage I saw today, I saw a lot of these fine fuels. And ironically enough, these fine fuels like fountain grasses, pampas grasses, broom, these are available in our nurseries, in big box stores. And we actually plant them and buy them innocently and unknowingly. But it's quite easy to know what an invasive plant is if you go to the California Invasive Plant Council. They have a comprehensive list, and PlantRight, you can see the little logo there, also helps set the record straight so that we can make good choices. So what's the alternative if we're not going to plant invasive plants? Well, of course, we're going to plant native. I'm sure you were not surprised that I was about to say that. Well, the reason we're going to plant native plants is because native plants have adapted to our specific region for millions of years, and they've adapted to withstand our normal cycles of drought and deluge. And one of those key features is they hold their hydration in the summertime. And if we can plant plants in a hierarchy that's well spaced and well organized and maintained in our landscape, then we can extend our defensible space. Now, how do we space these plants out to be as safe as possible? Well, a lot of people like instant gratification, and frankly, a landscape is not an Amazon Prime situation. We don't get a mature garden the next day, or even 6 months to a year. And so spacing is critical. If you are planting shrubs that are 10 by 10, and you have to keep shrubs 18 feet apart by fire code, then you need to plant those almost 30 feet apart. So really understanding the growth of your plant material is absolutely critical. And looking for a planting plan that provides maturity in 3 to 5 years instead of 6 months to a year is key. The other thing is maintenance is such a huge part of fire risk reduction. The further we plant our plants apart, the less maintenance we have. We don't have plants clobbering all over each other, creating dead material, creating diseases and pests and lack of airflow, as well as water waste from overplanting. And frankly, a lot of what I heard about the state parks is this overgrowth and fuel buildup over time. But we can plan a native garden that doesn't have those things. The next piece of this is trees. We could go on about trees for days and days and days, and I loved David's emphasis on trees being important. But trees can really be soldiers on your property to keep those embers from flying in and reaching your home. They can act as ember blockers. Oak trees are evergreen and stay hydrated year round. If they're well spaced from the home and maintained, those are wonderful trees that are going to, if they're spaced properly, can do a great job in protecting from embers reaching the home. Now, this is far away from any structures, but generally trees reduce heat. They keep an area cool, and the leaf litter, when it's very thick, 6 to 12 inches, can turn into moist brick mats that further hydrate the soil. And I know that anyone who's ever gone camping does not go and look for wet material to start a fire. So if we can keep it in mind that we're not eating or staying warm if we don't find dry material, and do the opposite in our landscapes, then we can realize that hydration goes a long way to cooling the environment. Palm trees generally are a good thing to avoid. I saw in the very first video that Adam put lots of palm trees with those dead husks, and they're like tiki torches. And even the ones that are maintained here, you can see the understory is already turning brown and can really create some danger. So not barren. So we have a lot of gravel scaping out in the landscape, and the problem with gravel scaping, even though it was very popular and promoted in the rebate in the last 5 years, gravel scapes with zero hierarchy of foliage to the house create ember bowling alleys. So embers can fly and reach your home and find a place to ignite. And so using that gravel wisely within that 5 to 10 foot defensible space where we're trying to keep everything free and clear is a better way to strategize if you want to use gravels and permeable pavings. But away from the house, you want to start to build a hydrated hierarchy. Now, it might be counterintuitive to think that irrigation is a good idea in drought, but remember, these are native plants, and native plants have adapted here to our weather and climate and will be the most adaptable as our climate changes. And so the amount of irrigation we're adding to keep plants from going into summer dormancy and hold their hydration is much less than we would be adding to a lawn or azaleas or some other plant that wasn't native to here. I'm kind of flying through this because for sake of time, but I do want to just take a moment that this guy really missed the memo. If you are a firefighter, this is utterly disrespectful if you expect a firefighter to come onto this property and protect your home and your family, because it's so unsafe for them. And I think one of the things that we want to, really embrace is that we are responsible for keeping our homes defensible when there is a fire. And so looking at properties that a firefighter can see where they're going to take their stance and turn their back on that home and fight an approaching fire is critical. And that is our responsibility to make sure that that space is available so firefighters can do their job and protect our homes. And it's interesting that many of the creature comforts that are around the home are the most flammable where embers can land and ignite. Cushions, umbrellas, furniture, wood piles, storage sheds, all of these things, tools, kids' toys, doormats, the list goes on. All of these things need to be put away when they're not in use and kept in storage that's 10 to 20 feet away from the house in a fire resistant vessel. So on the bigger picture, I loved how David the Forester said, we love nature. Well, we do. And we continue to build in known fire paths or in pristine areas where there are known cycles of fire in chaparral communities. When it's so much safer to build in infill communities and we can enjoy our nature where it's safe and keep our homes safe. Being proactive, we're not looking at a fire season anymore. We're not looking at July through September. We are thinking about fire safety year round. And it is so important to take care of that maintenance around your home year round. Get your work plan for your home hardening, make a list, make a timeline. You can check it off little by little. And then when you get the home hardening aspects done, you can move on to those landscaping aspects. The other thing is these, the fire safe councils and resilience hubs. You are only really as safe as your neighbor. And if you're not able to coordinate with your neighbors and your neighborhood, then you are putting yourself in greater risk. And there are fancy names, Firewise Community, Fire Safe Council, Resilience Hubs, but really this is about meeting your neighbor, saying hello, who's on your block, who has resources, where are the doctors, where are the nurses, where are the swimming pools, who are the elderly, who are ill, who have children, who have pets, who don't drive. That's what this is about. It's about finding out who in the community, where everybody stands so you can come together, pool resources and be there for each other. And Australia did an amazing study when they had many fire events that communities and neighborhoods that created these hubs and communities together were significantly more statistically likely to come back to those neighborhoods rather than desert them after a tragedy like a fire. So I'm going to wrap it up. These are some wonderful places you can go to visit some of our demonstration gardens. This is in Sierra Madre. We have all kinds of examples of wonderful things there. I would love to tell the story of this garden. A single person adopted it from the city, grew every single plant by hand. It's representative of the local plant material. And this is one of our fire stations. And basically, if we are always looking at, one bullet solutions, we're not going to be able to solve all of the problems. And looking at our home as being the most vulnerable and working out from there is going to be one of the best ways that we can gain all the benefits of protecting ourselves and being safer. And we have videos of me actually walking you through homes on, I believe, the USGBC-CA website. so that any of those steps that I did in a slide, you can actually see me live walking through those steps in a real situation. Thank you.
Just want to say thank you, Cassie, for your leadership on these issues and all of your support. It's so important to take these opportunities to really work our biodiversity and our native landscape into the work that we're doing here locally.